Let me tell you a story about a catastrophe that just shouldn't have happened. It's the story of how a village, right in the middle of a desert, was completely swallowed by a flood. We're going to dive into what happened in Kawas back in 2006 and how something that sounds impossible became a devastating reality. So, our story starts right here. Kawas, 2006. For the people who lived in this village, it was just home, a place defined by the sun, the sand, the desert. But this particular year, all of that was about to change in a way nobody could have imagined. Before the disaster, life in Kawawas had this familiar, peaceful rhythm to it. On any given day, you just see farmers out there tending to their crops under a huge, warm, calm sky. This was a community that knew its place in the world, in this dry, arid landscape. And you really have to feel that sense of peace to understand the true shock of what was coming. You have to picture the calm right before the storm. But that tranquility, well, it could be a little deceptive. Monsoon clouds like these were a pretty familiar sight. They were usually a welcome promise of rain for the crops, not a threat. There was absolutely no warning of the deluge that was on its way. And just like that peace was about to be completely shattered. Nature, it seemed, was turning violent. In just a matter of moments, the entire atmosphere shifts. The sky gets dark, really ominous. Strong winds start whipping sand and dust right through the village streets, and you can see lightning cracking across the horizon. A real sense of fear starts to set in. And then, the impossible happens. The first trickles of muddy water start creeping into the lanes. But it's not from rain. It seems to be coming up from the ground itself. For the villagers, it was just a moment of pure confusion and disbelief. This has to be the question on everyone's mind, right? A flood in the middle of the desert? It just makes no sense. This is land that's built for heat and dryness, not for a massive onslaught of water. Well, the horrifying answer wasn't in the sky. It was a catastrophic failure right there on the ground. There was a breach in the nearby Indira Gandhi Canal, and it sent this massive, unstoppable wave of water rushing across the flat desert landscape, aimed directly at this unsuspecting village. The result was almost instantaneous, and it was utterly devastating. This entire village was about to be completely submerged. And it happened so fast. Just look at this timeline. At hour 0, there's just confusion, right? By hour 2, the canal fails. And just 3 hours after that, the entire village is gone, swallowed by the flood. An entire world washed away in only 5 hours. The scene was apocalyptic, honestly. All that was left of Kawakas were the tops of houses poking through this vast, brown, swirling sea. And you could see helpless cattle trapped on those rooftops, the only little islands in this brand new, terrible lake. And the flood didn't just take homes, it took people's livelihoods. Thousands of acres of cotton and bajra crops just wiped out in an instant, buried under meters of water and silt. But here's the thing. Even as their world was literally disappearing beneath the water, the people fought back. And it led to this incredible, desperate struggle just to survive. It was just raw human drama in the middle of all that chaos. You had people wading through chest-deep water, holding their children and the few belongings they could save high above their heads. Families were desperately trying to stay together while rescue boats navigated what used to be streets. And soon, relief camps started popping up, becoming a lifeline of food, water, and medicine. And then, when the water finally receded, the noise and the panic of the crisis was replaced by a different kind of horror. The silent aftermath. The sheer scale of the loss, it was just overwhelming. It wasn't just one thing, it was everything. Homes were shattered, filled with this thick, suffocating mud. Roads were literally ripped apart, and a thick layer of silt just covered everything, making the land barren. The source material we looked at calls this a silent pain, and that's exactly what it was. This eerie quiet where a bustling village used to be, now just punctuated by the heartbreaking sight of what was lost, and children picking their way through the ruins of their world. But you know what? This story doesn't just end with destruction, because out of that silence, out of that devastation, something pretty remarkable began to grow. Hope, found right there in the ruins. Slowly, but so determinedly, people started to come back. They returned to the mud and the ruin, and they began this almost impossible work of reclaiming their lives, cleaning their homes, and rebuilding their community, literally piece by piece. And there's such profound power in this one simple image. A single lamp, a dia, lit against this backdrop of total destruction. It was an act of defiance, really, a declaration that light was going to return and that a future was still possible. So the story of Kawawas leaves us with a really powerful question, doesn't it? Where does hope even begin when everything is lost? Maybe it doesn't wait for the ruins to be cleared or for help to arrive. Maybe it begins right there, in the mud, with the simplest act of just carrying on, a single flame lit in the darkness.